The Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells is one of my favorite series of all time, and it is definitely my go-to like comfort read series, in particular the audiobooks. I think I've listened to the Network Effect audiobook like 4 or 5 times. I love it so much. So the second I got my hands on the audiobook for the latest book in the series, Platform Decay, I listened to it in one sitting, and here are my thoughts on it. Long story short, I loved it. Of course I did. It's more Murderbot. I give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was super fun, super entertaining. It did make me want to start a reread of the entire series, but I am holding off because I just reread Network Effect. I cannot do it again. Platform Decay sees a return to a much more familiar storyline for Murderbot after the big events of Network Effect and System Collapse. It does continue on kind of some of the storylines from that, but it's much more familiar and recognizable and fits in with kind of the pattern of the rest of the series. I will say I continue to be surprised with what Martha Wells kind of does with each book after Network Effect, because I would have thought at the end of Network Effect there was a very clear next step for Murderbot, but Martha Wells keeps managing to fit in like another adventure before that, and I don't know, maybe it's a contract thing, maybe there's plans for the overarching kind of end to the series that I don't know, but I keep thinking we're going to move away from kind of older characters or from preservation, and it keeps being tied back to that, and which is just surprising. I'm not saying it's necessarily disappointing because I do love each book that I read, but I keep thinking I know what's going to happen next, and then it's something completely different. I have loved following the evolution of Murderbot's character throughout this series, and I think Platform Decay is a really interesting follow-up to kind of the events and trauma that it experiences in Network Effect and System Collapse, and we see that it has learned to kind of use new tools, whether it likes it or not, and has kind of grown, and the emotion checks throughout this book were really funny, and they added kind of really well-timed humor throughout the very stressful events that happened in it's like everything in this book happens in like a day or 2 days. It's very fast-paced, constant action, and I loved kind of the bursts of wit and snark throughout it. Martha Wells timed them perfectly. It was also really amusing to see Murderbot interacting with the juveniles in this book, kind of what it would say and its lack of patience it would claim versus how it would actually treat the children was really endearing and sweet, and another nice side of Murderbot to see in this one. I was slightly disappointed not to see more of art in this one. I mean, System Collapse and Network Effect are my favorites for a reason, and art is a big reason, but it is what it is. I still really enjoyed this book. I have seen in interviews that Martha Wells is only contracted for one more book, and she does think that might be where she wants to end the series, and I would say I think that makes sense, kind of for the progression of the series in general. I think that would be a fitting end. I would hate to see it get dragged on to death.